Continuing our reading in Abraham Hannibal and the Raiders of the Sands by Francis Summers Cox. Today is chapter 23, The Island. The rain had stopped, and the afternoon sun was feebly trying to shine from between the clouds. They were inside a small natural harbor, and the sea was calmer here. From where Abraham was sitting, on the hillside, high up above the beach, he could see Ahmet, the merchant, striding up and down the water's edge like a madman, his wet robes flapping angrily, heavily against his thin body. "I'm ruined! I'm ruined! It's all lost! It's all lost!" came the thin sound of his voice over and over again. It was true. They could see the ship outside the little harbor, slanting wildly against the rocks that had gashed her, the waves out in the open sea still battering her. She would not last long. Only one of the two lifeboats had reached the shore, and the beach was dotted with sailors and passengers weeping, comforting each other, desperately looking out to sea and along the shore for those who had disappeared. But Abraham sat on the hillside above the beach, away from the free survivors. One person only was with him, the only other slave still alive, and together they looked silently out at the sea. There were over 30 slaves crammed on that boat, and now there are only two of us left. Only two of us who had the luck to make it through that little gap in the rocks. "I just keep having to say goodbye," said Abraham at last. "It's always goodbye." The other slave, Ngonga, was a very tall, thin, dark girl with short hair, and the straight, narrow scars of her people in rows across her forehead. She was a bit older than Abraham and had become quite friendly on the voyage. It wasn't that she looked or sounded like Lahia, but there was something about her that was calming and comforting, just the way his sister had been. "For me, also, it's always goodbye. Goodbye, goodbye," replied Ngonga. "And soon, maybe, I'll say goodbye to you also." "Stop it," said Abraham. "It's no good thinking about it. Look, let's see what this land is like. Master Ahmet can't stop us. Maybe we can escape together." They scrambled up the steep wooded hill behind the beach and looked all around them. But there was no land to escape into. They were on a tiny island with sheer rock cliffs on three sides, the harbor and the beach on the fourth, and nothing but coarse grass, bushes, trees, and surprisingly, for an uninhabited island, a few dozen goats. Over toward where the evening sun was beginning to redden the sky was the dim smudge of a much larger island, but how far to reach it? There was at least a tiny stream flowing down the hillside toward the sea, and the children drank thankfully from that. Far down below they could see the other survivors, some of them collapsed in huddles, others walking around purposefully as if searching for something. "Master Ahmet and the other people need water too," said Ngonga. "You mean you're worried they'll come here to look for it? I hope they find where the water flows down at the bottom of the hill. But we all need food. There are these goats, but how can we kill them? I don't have a knife, do you?" Ngonga shook her head. I think we go back to the beach. How can we live here?" "How can we live there, Ngonga? Down there we have a master. We are slaves. Up here, there are only us. We can be free. Let's stay one night, please." A little later, some of the men from the ship came clambering up the hillside and looked around, just as the children had done. But it was an easy matter to hide in a clump of bushes, and soon the men went away. And best of all, as they lay hiding, they saw a nanny goat grazing nearby, and food. Her udder was stretched big and tight with milk. The two children looked at each other and grinned. "I catch goat and you milk goat?" asked Ngonga in a whisper. "Or you catch goat and I milk goat?" "We'll have to take it in turns, I think," said Abraham. "We don't have a pot. I'll hold her first and you drink." We can try and catch her together. Ready?" The two children leapt out from behind the bush and threw themselves at the goat. Then Abraham held it round the forequarters with one arm, grabbed its back legs with his other hand, and Naganga lay on her back, wriggling under its belly, and milked it straight into her mouth. The goat jumped and bleated like a mad thing, and Naganga started off by getting a milk wash face. It wasn't made easier by the fact that she got a fit of the giggles, and then that started Abraham off too. At last, both the goat and the children quieted down, and Naganga got a long, warm, satisfying drink, and then she and Abraham changed places. It was an encouraging start. That night, their stomachs full of warm goat's milk, they slept on beds of sweet-smelling twigs. But Abraham lay awake a long while first, looking up at the bright stars, the new stars of the north that he had never known at home. This is like New Year and Christmas and Easter all rolled into one. The first day since Jeddah that I'm my own master. And that's the end of chapter 23.